I know we don't know where we're going. I know we don't know where we've been. Till now it's never been so complicated. Guess I'll just follow the new trends. I don't care what you think or say. Those concrete clocks are clicking, static time away. There's no time left to think things through. But oh well. I know we don't know where we're going. I know we don't know where we've been. Till now it's never been so complicated. Guess I'll just follow the new trends. Give me the wind and the unknown. We are the broken pieces of the cornerstone. There's no time left to think things through. But oh well. I know we don't know where we're going. I know we don't know where we've been. Till now it's never been so complicated. Guess I'll just follow the new trend. I know we don't know where we're going. I know we don't know where we've been. Till now it's never been so complicated. Guess I'll just follow the new trends. Guess I'll just follow the new trends. Hey, hey. Guess I'll just follow the new trends. Hey, hey. Guess I'll just follow the new trends. Hey, hey.
From the Ron Miller Race Car Studio, this is the Hammer Down Racing Report. And now your hosts, Scott Hammer and Ron Miller.
Welcome to the Hammer Down Racing Reports. I'm your host, Scott Hammer. That guy right there, it's Ron Miller.
Hello. Hey. Hi, guys.
And joining us tonight, live from the virtual Ron Miller Race Car Studio, we have Norm Van Ness.
Yeah.
And he's in his bird derp.
Yeah, he was gonna scream whether I left him on the cage or on my shoulder, so he'll chime in once in a while with comments. So when he's upset about something, you guys will know for sure.
So we'll be talking to Norm here in just a little bit about, you've been involved in racing in different ways, shapes, and forms for how long?
Oh boy, since birth.
Okay. So we got a lot to talk about there, and you remember, you might recognize Norm from his days as weather guy on Channel 24. And so he did some nice pieces. We'll talk about one of those cool pieces you put together.
And we can't forget his awesome feature wins at O'Shea Raceway.
We're not talking about that right now. We're not going to talk about that. We'll talk about that later. Coming at you live on Facebook. If you'd like to join our sponsors that include all these scrolling here at the bottom, if you're watching us live on Facebook, including Ron Miller Race Cars. Give him a call, 734-856-7223. He's got race cars, parts, safety equipment. He'll make you an iRacing rig. If you can think of it, he can do it. He's got parts, anything you need. Yeah, right? Anything else? Got any deals going on, Ron?
No. You imagine it, we'll build it, fix it.
Also, thanks to Dean Henry, Big D's Pizza in Clyde. Have you had Big D's, Norm? You're over on that side, that area. You're closer to them.
I have been known to frequent them on occasion. Yes, absolutely.
All right. Big D's Pizza over there at Clyde, 419-547-1444. Mention Hammer Down Racing Report, and you will save 10% off your order. So there you go, Norm. Next time you order pizza, just mention the show. Also, thanks to Oakshade Raceway, just north of Wassiam, we're the fastest meet to race every Saturday night when there's not a pandemic going on. We'll talk more about that later, too. And also, newest sponsor, thanks to Racing for First Responders, supporting first responders. Check them out on Facebook. And we're actually going to have the driver that represents the Racing for First Responders next week on the show, Rob Rem. So we'll talk more about that later too.
In
Also,
case you just tuned in, Norm really does have a bird on his shoulders.
yeah, that's not a. That's yeah. Tonight
He's
on the
lying.
show, we're going to talk about all the more delayed racing season starts for our region tracks. We'll talk about Matt Kenseth coming out of retirement, an update on the Dittman Motorsports virtual car show, which round 2 is going on right now. As a matter of fact, let's bring this up here because you have just about a little over an hour left to vote. And we have the Rebel Dennis Wisman representing Flat Rock, figure 8 driver there, up against Terry Rushlow and his stock car there. And right now, I'll give you the votes. It is you probably can't read that, but it's 480 for the Rebel and 592 for Terry Rushlow. So Rushlow, it's got a pretty good lead with an hour left. So maybe
All you Flat Rock folks jump in there and support Dennis.
Yeah. Also needing some support is Larry Kingseed Jr. It's a little bit closer here. He's trailing Matthew Chapman. Chapman has 490 votes to Kingseed's 419. 419. Get it? This area code. If somebody else votes for Larry Kingseed, that's going to mess that up, but I'm sure he won't mind. So again, that'll be going on till about 8:15, I believe, and then the winner out of each of those will be pitted up against each other for the Dittman Motorsports Championship and a chance to win. I got the list here. I got all kinds of stuff going on. They got the $200 credit Dittman Motorsports, $100 credit Ron Miller Race Cars, $50 gift certificate for Big D's Pizza. Big D's all over racing. Love Dean. $10 or 10 gallons, $10 gallons of racing fuel. Also, fourth place finisher, that goes to the third place finisher, the 10 gallons of racing fuel. Fourth place finisher will get a pit pass for Oakshade Raceway, which hopefully we can use this year. So,
Don't forget, we have the really cool swag from Vintage American Race Cars.
oh, I did forget that. That was further down in my notes. Yes, some Vintage American Race Cars with the pink hat. Where's that at? You're not wearing it tonight.
I can get it.
Okay. Too close. There you go. There, it's happening.
There we go.
Looking good. Looking good, Mr. Miller. So, those polls, you can vote if you haven't done so already on Hammer Down Race Report Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Hammer Down Racing Report. Again, up until 8 o'clock, and then we'll switch, put up some new polls. I'm sorry, 8:15. Then probably about 8:30, we'll have the championship poll up from the winners there, and we'll have our, I don't know, what would you call that for the third and fourth place guys against each other? The losers
Third and
bracket?
fourth place winners.
Okay, we'll go with that. So there was some racing last weekend. Hasn't been much of it going around other than virtual computer racing. But Park Jefferson International Speedway originally was going to allow spectators, and then I don't remember if I think it was in the best interest of the safety of people that they decided to race spectatorless and just had the racing online. But I guess, and they'd already sold, I think they were selling 700 tickets. The place was sold out, so they had to refund that money. But Brock Zierfoss made the 19-hour trip from Pennsylvania to South Dakota and collected the $6,000 win.
Woo!
Open Wheel Nationals. That was Saturday night there at Park Jefferson International Speedway. Ricky Thornton Jr. took the IMCA modified feature win. I think Kenny Wallace was up there competing in that too. And Thornton actually went on to win race on Sunday at New Raceway Park, also in South Dakota. A couple of virtual racing action deals. The IndyCar guys were at the Virtual Circuit of the Americas, and Lando Norris. I'm having trouble reading this because when I printed out my notes, I printed it on something that was already printed, so I do apologize. It's only the
race
first.
cars can sponsor you a ream of paper if it
It's
had
only
helped.
the first page, though. See, the rest is we're good on that. We're almost done with the first page. But Lando Norris spun early in that AutoNation IndyCar Challenge, but came back to win after Felix Rosenqvist spun while leading with 4 laps to go. Up next for the IndyCar guys is Virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That's at 2:30 on Saturday on NBCSN. And the real Indianapolis action pushed back until August and Independence Day weekend for the road course. Also, iRacing this past weekend, and also marking the return of Jeff Gordon to NASCAR racing, sort of, was the Talladega Super Speedway for the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Invitational Series event. Alex Bowman edged out Corey LaJoie and Ryan Preece in a pretty close finish on Sunday. Next race for those guys will be at Virtual Dover. I think that's the last scheduled eNASCAR race, too. It's going to be at 1 o'clock on Fox FS1, Fox Sports app on Sunday afternoon. Other iRacing winners this past week, Trent Ivey won the World of Outlaw Late Model iRacing Invitational. That was Monday. For Virtual Eldora, Logan Schuchart won Tuesday's World of Outlaw iRacing Sprint Car Invitational, also at Virtual Eldora Speedway. And that's pretty much all the racing that was going on this past weekend. Some tracks are set to open this weekend, though. Federated
Scott, I didn't get to watch the NASCAR e-race. How was it? Did you see it at all?
Yeah, it was all right. It was,
Ish.
Yeah, I think the novelty of it is kind of wearing off, and now it's just kind of like watching a bunch. I mean, it's cool that they show like Clint Boyer and Jeff Gordon, the behind the scenes, or even was it Austin Dillon, and the people that have the webcams, so you can kind of see what they're doing, and when they talk to them, that's kind of interesting. But other than that, it's kind of somebody's playing a video game. It's on TV, cool. But it was pretty much like a real Talladega race. Jeff Gordon got flipped up into the catch fence, so that was pretty cool. But
now, did they have did they have resets there, or it was a no reset race?
They had one reset, I do believe, for this race. So I think Gordon had a problem though, because his virtual car got stuck in the fence and he couldn't drive back to the pits for his reset, so he got a ways down. I think he finished like almost last or something. But
we were out of the state, actually, and restocking.
Are you allowed to? Are you allowed to do that?
We were restocking the Miller family farm here, so we left the state. Right. Seems there's no pigs available in the state of Michigan, so we had to go to the Buckeye State.
All right. Well, before we talk about real racing making a return, we have a special guest with us this week, Norm Van Ness. Thank you for joining us.
Now, very cool. Something I wanted to add, though, that race at Park Jefferson, the real race that they had, local connection to that. Somebody I think you maybe have had on your show before, Craig Mintz.
Oh, yeah.
Craig and his dad own Real Geese Decoys, and they were one of the sponsors up there for that race. They didn't make the haul out there, obviously. It's a little far to go, but hey, if Zierfoss can go from Pennsylvania, maybe they should have given it a go. But yeah, they were one of the title sponsors for that race, Real Geese Decoys. Craig from right here in Gibsonburg, where I'm at right now, and their company's based out of Bradner. So that was pretty cool to see that they had a little part in some actual real racing that took place over the weekend.
Let me ask you, Norm, in this climate, how far is too far to go to race?
Oh boy, if you've got some really big sponsors on your race car,
hey, gas is cheap. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, I don't think. Well, diesel didn't come down all that much, but yeah, gasoline's cheaper. But yeah, I think if you've got some of those big national companies on your race car and you want to honor those obligations and make sure that they're still around for you for the rest of the year and for next season, you probably got to consider it for sure.
So tell us about your family's history being involved in race, how you got into racing from birth, as you said earlier.
Well, yeah, as I mentioned, being here in Gibsonburg, Ohio, this is where my family's from. And what was interesting about how that whole deal got started, my grandfather, along with two of his two sons, Jim and my dad, which was Norm Sr., they always started fielding race cars clear back in the 50s, back in the old modified coupe days, when really it was a garage, a torch, and a wrench, and pretty much, that was your shop, was the garage out behind your house. And they put several race cars together, had many different drivers over the years, several of them in some of the local racing Hall of Fames now. But they just kind of kept things going through the 50s and 60s, eventually making the move to what one would consider to be more of the modern sprint car. They really kind of converted and even had and owned at points old Indy Roadsters. As a matter of fact, my one of the first pictures I have of me anywhere near a race car, I was literally maybe 1 year old, sitting in the cockpit of a converted Indy Roadster. They would, a lot of guys locally, some more famously than others, Johnny Oxter from right here in Gibsonburg. He was one of the guys that they would buy those old Indy Roadsters, shorten them up to run them on dirt tracks, and
Right.
though that kind of became that evolution of what became what we now know as sprint cars. They always just called them modifieds back then, but the family had cars going from the 50s all the way up into the 70s. Dick Holcomb was one of our drivers from right here in town. They had Bill Sickeney's drive for them for a while as well. Bill Sickeney's a very well-known fabricator. In fact, some of Bill's race cars are starting to come back into the fray. One of you'll probably recognize another Gibsonburg name, and that would be Johnny Bieber. Back when he was driving for the North Street Auto team out of Pennsylvania, he went on an absolute tear one year. I want to say it was back maybe in the mid or early 80s. Went on a tear and won over 50 races in a single season. And the car that he drove recently got recovered, refurbished, and was doing the vintage circuit. And that car was recently donated by the Sickeney's family, and now I believe is sitting down at the Fremont Speedway Hall of Fame. So
That's pretty cool.
lots of Gibsonburg connections. And again, the family just stayed with it. And even to this day, my cousins are still racing. I'm representing Alvin Rupke. Alvin moved out of the 410 ranks and is doing more of the 305 deal now at Fremont, sometimes over at Attica. But and even another cousin, his brother Dan and his son still get out in a dirt truck once in a while at Fremont and Attica. So still lots of family involved in it, and it's been a great history. I don't know if you can see back behind me. That's actually a wing panel from back in the 70s off of what was then known as the Bullwinkle Special, the family car back then, driven by, I believe, Dick Holcomb and Bill Sickeney's both ran that one at one point. But that is actually a piece of, quiet there, Bird. That's actually a piece of 1/2-inch plywood. So it's a sideboard of an old sprint car wing from back in the probably late 60s, early 70s, back when they were still running with plywood wings. And the artwork, just for fun and for the kids, my Aunt Joanne, she would hand paint these on the wings just so that the kids in the stands would have something to look at. And one of the cartoons back then was Bullwinkle. So she painted Bullwinkle on it, and the car was forever known as the Bullwinkle Special after that. So pretty neat to see that represented still to this day. It wasn't too long ago when my family got inducted. My grandfather, my dad, and my Uncle Jim all got inducted into the Fremont Speedway Hall of Fame. And Craig Mintz has always been friends with the family. He actually sported and did his side wing, his whole wing, for that race that night at the Hall of Fame that they got inducted. He did it with the Bullwinkle on it. So it was pretty neat because he actually won the race that night with Bullwinkle on the wing. So we were overly joyed that night.
No, that
Sadly, a lot of those old sprint cars are what led to the demise of some of the gorgeous Indy Roadsters. That there just aren't many of those. There just aren't many of those left around, and some of those were the most spectacular race cars in history.
Oh, absolutely. They look like tanks, and I think they probably drove like tanks as well. But boy, that was a neat little run there for a while. When you look back through the photos, I'm sure Ron, you remember seeing them in person. I'm not quite old enough for that, but
Actually, I do.
yeah, okay. But yeah, just seeing some of the pictures of those roadsters that they had cut down and shortened up, that era of sprint cars and seeing those cars on dirt tracks, they are amazing, amazing pictures. I remember seeing pictures of the Unsers, the Rutherfords, guys like that running those even AJ Foyt, I think at one point was running those chopped Indy roadsters. So yeah, a lot of history with those race cars.
Well, and seeing the Indy Roadsters on a lot of the fairgrounds dirt tracks was impressive.
Yeah, and we're still, we're lucky in this part of the country because it just doesn't happen in too many places anymore. Most of the racetracks are going to be purpose-built racetracks, but we're lucky with places like Attica and Fremont right over this way. To be actual true fairgrounds racetracks and
Yep.
to still be able to see that. And I know that it went away for a while, but they've resurrected having a race during the Sandusky County Fair. I believe it got rained out last year, but yeah, it's pretty neat to see that connection still and see them running. Well, it used to be on the old horse tracks, but eventually they made them into good clay racing surfaces now. So it's a lot of fun to see that and know that part of that history is still alive and well right here in this part of the country.
Yep.
Now, are you still involved in any kind of racing anymore these days, or
no,
just there
I'm
as a fan?
Pretty much just a fan, and I've really always kind of just been a fan. Every once in a while I'll get a Saturday and I'll go help somebody, a sprint car racer from down in Fremont who's a friend, Brian Smith. It's usually either his wife or one of his kids that will end up being his crew chief for the night because he's one of those budget racers. They work hard and play hard with everything that they got. And yeah, there was a weekend there, not maybe 2 summers ago that our salon that we own in Bellevue, Ohio, SAS Salon and Spa, we actually are one of the sponsors for him, and he needed somebody just to come and be that extra set of hands. So when you do that for him, you're pretty much titled as his crew chief for the night. I don't know if I was worthy of that title or not, but it was fun to go down there and lend Brian a hand. And when the cousins are around, we always go down and hang out in the pits with them too. So it's fun. I tell you what, it's been hard because usually by now, you've been to a race, you've walked through the pits when they're warming the motors up, and you get that burnt race fuel smell in your nose, and it takes you back to that very first time you ever walked the pits as a kid, and it still makes you excited even as an adult. Now, past 50 years of life on this planet, I still get the chill bumps when I walk down in the pits and I hear those motors lopping along and get to smell that race fuel burning. It's something that we're missing for sure this year.
Well, and you've done some racing.
Yeah, my cousin, he I don't know if it was a good idea or not.
Rod knows where I was going with that.
Tear it up too bad, but my cousin Dan Rupke that still has a dirt truck. He let me in his truck a couple of times when NBC 24. When I worked there, we sponsored some race nights out at Attica Raceway Park. So we thought it'd be fun to get me in his truck and go out there. I think the first time I raced out there, there was maybe 25 trucks in the feature, and I think I finished 13th. And that's the first time I'd done any sort of organized racing against guys that race every week in a long, long, long time. I'd have to go clear back to when I was in high school, but did pretty good. And then the next time we did really good in the heat race. The last time I raced out there, as a matter of fact, I turned the fastest lap in my heat race out of anybody else that was out there. So I was all jazzed up and ready to go. we got out there in the feature early. Somebody spun in front of me, didn't have anywhere to go, and wadded it up. So so that was the end of that night. And I thought I had a shot that night, but oh well. And then of course the charity races we did out at Oakshade. Those were a lot of fun.
So how did it feel losing to me in that celebrity charity race?
Let's see, what year? Oh, I remember that year. The year that I lost to you, matter of fact. And boy, I got to give a shout out to the people that the racers that put us in their race cars out there for that, because
they were very brave.
Yes, they were. And Craig Dipman, boy, I felt sorry for him the last time we were out there. But yeah, I tell you what's really fun about doing that is, number one, we got to go out and race real race cars, which is always fun, but it was so great to raise the money for the charities that we did over the years. And we raised a lot of money, but yeah, that was a lot of fun out there. I think the first year I did it, I was in Dave Siverson's car. And Craig Dipman put me in his car once, and I think Jeff Geis let me run his car a few times. So yeah, so thanks to all those guys for being brave enough to put us out there. But I think the only year that I did not win that I ran out there, and that's the year that Scott won, was I was running Dipman's car. I think I was leading by half a lap, came in the back stretch and burped the throttle going into 3 to set the car. And when I went back to the gas, there was nothing. The transmission dropped out of it.
And that was the last lap too.
Yeah, and I think that Lynx came up behind me with a ton of bricks, didn't realize that I was broke, came up and thought I was going to be driving out of the turn and ran right into the back of me. And that hit was just enough that I was able to coast across the finish line. I didn't finish last, but I didn't win that one.
Yeah, I think actually when I saw you slow down and Dan run into you, I was thinking, I thought the race was over because you were slowing down. I was like, oh, I must have missed a checkered flag. And then I noticed he was waving the checkered flag, and I was like, all right, I'm going to keep going then. But yeah, those were a lot of fun.
The thing I remember about the last one was, I think that before they only let us run maybe 8 or 9 laps. And I think the last one, they let us go like maybe 10 or 12. They just let us run for a while because we had a little bit of a mash up there at the beginning of the race. I remember
that. Had nothing to do with that.
Nothing at all to do with that. But the funny part of it was, I remember the last couple laps, once I finally made my way up into the lead, how out of breath I was. I don't know if I was holding my breath for the first 10 laps and then just decided to breathe all of a sudden. But man, I was gassed by the time we were done with that one. That was a tough race to go all the way to the back and come back to the front again. So, and Scott, it's always fun to reminisce and watch those YouTube videos because we get to hear Mr. Miller's awesome commentary as a mentor.
Scott, that race, is that the one that you won? Is that the one that set the hook where you decided you wanted a race car?
No, I think it was actually the very first race we did kind of set the hook there.
Yeah, my hook's been set for a long time. I just haven't scrounged the money together to do it just yet. And I get really lucky, too. One of those early NBC 24 nights out at Attica Raceway Park, John Boers was brave enough to let me hot lap his late model. And that was an eye-opener. I had never been in a race car that had, number one, had that much power, and number two, had the tires and the setup on a wet track to really hook that power up to the racetrack. If you're in a bomber or one of the dirt trucks, you're on the smaller tires, harder compounds. It's really hard to get those things to hook up. But boy, the first time I stomped on that late model, that scared me a little bit.
I think Scott can relate.
That was before. That was like one of the first times I was in a race car, so I don't know if that counts.
Yeah, and it's disconcerting when that thing leans all the way over and then the suspension finally locks up and the rear end does that mystical, magical thing that it does, and you feel like you should shoot into the infield, but instead you're shooting off at a 45-degree angle. It was the weirdest thing to feel, but it was a lot of fun to run that. And it's weird because with me being a huge sprint car fan, all of these years, I have never been behind the wheel of a sprint car. So one of these days, somebody's going to call me up, or they're going to have a fun day or a test session, and they're going to be like, "All right, it's your time. Get out here. You're going to do it." And trust me, I will be there. I will be there.
Yeah, give Craig a call. Would Craig
Yeah, you know
drive
what?
Craig?
He had talked about it. They used to actually rent Oakshade once in a while and go out and do some test and tune and some fun for crew members and stuff. And I don't know if they ever stopped doing that. That was still, I think, in their 305 days. I don't think they'd ever maybe do that with an amateur in their 410 because they got a pretty hip program going out there. They've got top-notch equipment, Kistler engines. So that's a whole nother ball game when you step up into the real stuff. And that's kind of what's cool, I think, about racing in this part of the country is that it's so competitive at all of these local tracks. At Oakshade, Lima Land's another great example. You look at Fremont and you look at Attica and how competitive it is. It's neat because that competitive environment actually generates and kind of motivates these teams to step up their game. So when the big guys come into town, it doesn't matter if it's during Hell Week out there at Oakshade, doesn't matter if it's Speed Week or the Outlaws or the All-Stars coming through on the sprint car tracks around here. The locals always have a shot. So that's one really cool thing about both Attica, Fremont, and out there at Oakshade as well. I think that's what keeps the fans coming back. And I know it's what keeps me coming back is going to these big races around here. And there is an absolute legitimate shot for some of the locals to pick off a big win. And I've seen it happen multiple times. As a matter of fact, my cousin that's on my shirt back when in his 410 days actually won the Brad Doty Classic out at Attica Raceway Park. So
Impressive.
Yeah, one of the most famous Victory Lane quotes of all time was they stuck the microphone in his face and he said, "Holy moly, I won the Doty." I'll never forget that night. It was really great. I was actually living out of state, came back specifically to catch some racing. And managed to get there that night with my dad, and we got a great picture of Alvin, me, and my dad standing in Victory Lane beside the race car with that big giant trophy. It's a night I'll never forget. He won it. Was not the most powerful race car out there. Didn't have the most expensive race car. Didn't have the brand new tires. He won it on a set of American racers, just making perfect laps on the bottom when everybody else was trying to run the top. And it was one of the coolest races I think I've ever seen in person. Not only that a local picked it off, but heck, I was related to the guy. It was pretty cool.
Now, if you had to pick a favorite track to watch a race at, what track anywhere in the country? What's your favorite track you've been to?
I've been to a good number of them. I really and there are people that will say good things and bad things about it. But us being from Ohio, you got to always have Eldora up at the top of your list. It does not matter what is racing on that track; it's going to be exciting and it's going to be cool. But I think. It's funny because when you go back and you think about it, yeah, Eldora is Eldora. It will always be Eldora. But I would have to say out of the top 10 races that I have seen in person that I would rank up there as the best races I've ever seen, I'd have to say probably 5 of those top 10 were at Attica Raceway Park. So Attica is definitely up there. The action at that racetrack is always on point. The locals always represent well when the big guys come into town. And when you go out there just for a regular night of racing, it's still top-notch racing. Every single division is going to be competitive. You're going to see things that you don't see at other racetracks, and they just do such a fantastic job out there. And 9 times out of 10, you go to Attica for a regular show, you're on the road back home at 9:30 at night. What more can you ask for?
All right. So you put together this cool video when you were working at Channel 24, and it's still, I still watch it, and it's pretty impressive. Slinging Dirt was it, the name of it, I believe it was. How did you get permission to put that together?
That was fun. I
Did
had
you have to
always,
convince somebody to say, "Hey, I got this cool idea. How did that come about?" And then tell us about the production of it.
well, what was kind of neat about that was I had, pitched local racing to our sports department. I had pitched local racing to our management. Had gone and talked to them several times about, hey, look, you've got probably anywhere, some of these racetracks on a regular night, 1,500 to 2,000 people going to a race locally on a weekend. And that's every weekend during the summer. There's sometimes that our sports department, and I've always made this argument, there was sometimes that the sports department at the local TV stations were going and covering a college baseball game, and there was 20 people in the stands. And I always thought that was a huge disservice to all the racing fans that were in our area. You've got even Toledo Speedway really packs them in there on the weekends, even for a regular show. So we went to them, and it was kind of a culmination of a couple of different things coming together. I know what they did was they came and they said, you know what, we need some more local programming. And does anybody at the station have an idea of, maybe an extended special production that we might be able to do? We would run it on weekends. They would be half-hour shows, that kind of thing. So I went to them and I pitched the idea, and they greenlit it immediately. They're like, wow, we think that's a great idea. And then they were even happier when I went to the sales department and said, okay, here's the companies you need to go to and talk to sell your commercials in during this thing. So it was really myself and maybe, I think we had 3 additional people that helped us with the photography. And then a couple of those different guys did some of the editing. I did some of the editing myself. So not only was I the producer, so to speak, but I was also a videographer and an editor and the host of the whole thing. So it was my pet project. I wanted it to be good. I wanted it to be top notch and really showcase these awesome race facilities that we have here in Northwest Ohio. Boy, it exceeded my expectations. I wanted it to be good, and it turned out to be out of the park great. I was really happy with it.
Norm, I was thinking the other day, there's been talk, obviously, of racetracks doing spectatorless events. What's the chance, and does BCSN have the technology to do pay-per-view of getting, and they've done some pretty good local productions.
Yeah, I actually, a couple of different occasions did color commentary for them,
Right.
and even did play-by-play when they were at Fremont Speedway. I did that a couple times for them. I think technologically, it wouldn't be that hard for them to do, but you're going to have to figure out how it's going to make enough money without people in the stands to get people to be willing to pay. And then there's the question of how much they pay. I know that even in this virtual racing thing that everybody's been so excited about with nothing else to look at, the NASCAR guys have been on national TV, and the World of Outlaws Sprint Car guys decided to go with their subscription service, and there's been a lot of blowback on that. It's like, look, it's not. You're asking people to pay to watch a video game race, and that's kind of rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. I think some of those races that the Outlaws have been doing have showed up on CBS Sports Network recently, but yeah, it's a tough row to hoe. I mean, it's knock on wood. I'm lucky enough to still be working during this whole thing, but there's a lot of people that are out of work too, looking for some form of entertainment. And race fans are included in that group. So to ask them to pay to watch some people do a computer simulated race, I don't know if I'm exactly.
Yeah, but no, I'm talking about real racing. Let's say Attica Raceway, Oakshade Raceway, nobody in the grandstands, BCSN, doing a good job videoing, which they've done.
They do a good job with the walleye coverage, and they stream that online during the playoffs. So that's something maybe that we could look. Maybe we need to talk.
If you think about a $25 subscription to watch a race, that's a whole lot cheaper than taking your family and pit passes or grandstand passes, and you make your own food.
There you go.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
you miss out on a lot of the experience, I think.
It,
But
it goes
yeah,
back
there
to
will
that
be a
race.
market.
It goes back to that burned race fuel that you were talking about.
Yeah, and I think that the difficult thing there is going to be the price point. Now, would I be willing if they put a race together, say at Attica, Fremont, or even Oakshade, and that price point was $10, I might be willing to do that. If that price point was 20, you're starting to lose me. If it gets up around 25, or I have to subscribe for multiple races, then I don't know that I'd be willing to do that. But
Yeah, I
if
would envision it as being a race by race deal.
yeah.
And they could change venues because BCSN has that ability.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I think the technology's there to do that. I know that even television news. I mean, to do a live event or something like that would involve some sort of satellite truck, some a much more difficult technological leap. But now they've got. To where you can do live television in high definition with literally a backpack. I mean, we've seen so many innovations come to light.
Dora the
I was just
Explorer is going to be doing the videos.
right,
backpack.
exactly. We were watching American Idol the other night, and they sent cell phones. They sent Apple iPhones out to all their singers, and that's how they were doing this latest elimination round. Was they were literally singing into an apparatus, and all the cameras were iPhones. So everybody's kind of figuring out different ways of doing things in this whole shutdown right now. So somebody's going to find a way to figure it out, especially at a more local level. I mean, you get to a bigger track like Attica, or correction, like Eldora, or I know Knoxville. The World of Outlaws sprint cars are going to be holding a race at Knoxville, an actual real race here coming up. I think I'm
Next
not sure.
weekend.
It's going to be, yeah, they're actually going to do a race. And I think there's enough demand out there that pay-per-view wise, but that a lot of people will watch it. But that's a racetrack that's already got the infrastructure to do it. They've already got, they've got the power of the World of Outlaws brand behind them. So I don't think they'll have too much of a problem. But if somebody like Attica or Fremont or even Oakshade wanted to give it a try, it's going to be a little tougher. There's some expense, but you got to applaud somebody that wants to give it a shot.
And BCSN has to be pretty hungry to try something live right now.
Yeah, when we're down to the point of watching, World Series games from 1965 and watching
Super Bowl
people with
III.
way too much money on iRacing rigs that they've spent more. I know people that have real race cars that haven't spent the kind of money some of these guys have spent on their iRacing rigs. So if we get a chance to watch a real race live, I think you might get more people to go for it.
I know the article that Rex Lejeune was in the other day talking about having to push back their May races and cancel those. They asked him about doing a pay-per-view kind of deal, and he had said, I don't remember exactly the quote, but without the butts in the stands, that pays for a good portion of the purse. And the only way a pay-per-view would work is if it's a big event and you're not competing with, other tracks across the country, to have a big event, because then you're slicing that pie a little bit smaller. And I don't know what the money you're going to make from a pay-per-view would be. So
right, and that's always going to be the difficulty too. You still got to pay all your track personnel. You still have to spend the money and fuel to prepare the track. It's going to be tough either way.
Obviously, your back gate's still going to be there.
Yes, your back gate's still going to be there, and there are promoters who will say that. Well, I don't think you'd ever get a promoter to say it. I think you'll get plenty of racers to say it, that the back gate is what pays the purse, and the front gate and the concessions, that's just the cherry on top. But I know some people who have been in the business of running racetracks for a long time, and they'll tell you that is absolutely not the case. It takes every single penny coming in, along with all the the sponsorships that happen, the contingency sponsors, all that stuff has to come together to pull it off. It's not like I don't know of any racetrack owner in the country that's getting rich running a racetrack on a weekly basis.
Chris Mize seemed to indicate that the BCSN guys have to put up with him when they're in the tower. Must be a tough job.
Yes, exactly. BCSN, they do some neat stuff, and it's an environment, and it's funny because it's true with BCSN as it is with any local TV station and any local radio station. It goes all the way back to when I was working at KUSA in Denver, Colorado. The general manager of the station came down and gave us a speech, and some of the people in the newsroom were, a little upset about, feeling like they weren't getting much love. And I remember them being put in their place very quickly when the general manager said, all you guys just remember that everything you do is just to keep my commercials from bumping into each other. So that's pretty much what you need to know about television. If they can find a way to make money off of it, they'll do it.
Yeah.
If they don't think they're going to make money off it, forget about it. It'll never happen.
All right, then. One last question for you. And again, we appreciate you giving us the time coming on, talking.
Appreciate you having me.
You still doing the band thing, playing some music?
Oh yeah, we're still doing that once in a while. This is the bird had to stretch there, so he's trying to show off for you a little bit. This guy's a wrestler.
Is that your band's front man?
He can scream, and he does headbang once in a while. So yeah, but the little dude is pretty funny. He's a rescue, and he's brought a lot of joy and a lot of terror to our life at the same time. But yeah, we're and that's the bad part of this whole deal too. Two of the things that I spend a lot of my free time doing is going and watching bands play live and going to the big concerts. We were really looking forward to Bike Week up in Sandusky this year because they get a lot of good bands there. But now I can't go to any races and I can't go watch any live bands. But it was funny right there just after the beginning of the year. We got to do a couple of charity events and MC those, which was great. Got to have a big jam session with a bunch of friends back in March, right before the whole thing started and started shutting everybody down. So yeah, pretty much rocking and racing is what we do for fun, and can't do either of them right now. So,
well, hopefully we get back to racing sooner than later. Norma, thanks for joining us. Yeah. Feel free to stick around here if you want.
Sure, we'll hang out for a bit.
Chris Mize, we're going to bring in a little bit here, but I want to get through a little bit of racing news here first. And before we do that, I'm going to make this go like that just because I can. And I did want to mention we have a lot of listeners that may be outside this area as well, may not be familiar with BCSN. That's our local cable network here in Toledo, sports network they have. So, and they do have streaming available for that for people that aren't in
for all kinds of sports, not just racing.
Yeah, I think it's like BCSN Nation or something. I should get them as an advertiser now since we're plugging them so much. So Ryan Newman's been cleared to return to Cup racing. He made that announcement during the broadcast of the iRacing thing on Sunday, and NASCAR confirmed that he's got the go-ahead. So when that happens, Newman will be back in the 6 car, and I'll tell you when that's going to happen here in just a couple of minutes. Another driver making the return to racing is Matt Kenseth, who's coming out of retirement to pilot the Chip Ganassi 42 for the rest of the season, replacing Kyle Larson, who used a word he should not have used while doing iRacing. Both drivers have also been granted waivers from NASCAR and are eligible for the championship. So if they can make the deal to make the playoffs, they'll be eligible for that. So basically, if they win a race, they'll be in. Auto Week reported earlier this week that NASCAR may resume racing on May 17th at Darlington. And then at 3 o'clock this afternoon, NASCAR did release a actual release of a schedule, which does include Darlington on Sunday, May 17th. They have actually officially put out 4 Cup race events, 2 Xfinity races, and 1 Truck Series race. And they go like this. This is kind of a weird schedule. But Sunday, and these will all be without fans. They're going to be racing without fans, but they will be on TV, and these are real races. This is not iRacing. This is going back to real racing. North Carolina did deem that NASCAR teams were essential workers. Essential workers, yeah. So Darlington on Sunday, May 17th, is going to be on Fox at 3:30. That's going to be a 400-mile race. Tuesday, May 19th, there's going to be an Xfinity race at Darlington. That'll be a 200-mile race. That'll be at 8 o'clock in the evening on FS1. And then Wednesday night, May 20th, the Cup Series will again race at Darlington. That'll be a 500-kilometer race, and that'll be on FS1 at 7:30. From there, they're going to move to Charlotte starting Sunday, May 24th. That'll be the Coca-Cola 600, which is the original scheduled date of that anyways. That'll be on Fox at 6 o'clock. That's all pretty much the regular time. Monday, Memorial Day, the Xfinity Series will run at 7:30. That'll be a 300-mile race. That'll be on FS1. Tuesday, May 26th, the Truck Series will be at Charlotte for a 200-mile race on FS1 at 8 o'clock. And then the Cup Series again on Wednesday on FS1 at 8 o'clock. And I'm thinking that despite their waning ratings and, the disinterest of NASCAR, they have a opportunity here to be in the spotlight as the only national sport that's doing anything that can do anything. So I think that's a pretty big deal for them.
4 races in 11 days. That's going to be really tough on the crews.
But it gives the fans something to do, even if you're not really a NASCAR fan. I mean, I'm guessing just the typical Joe Schmo is looking for some kind of sports that's not the 1960 World Series or whatever. Will be like, this is live at least. Maybe I'll watch this. Bunch of cars going around.
Is this going to be a home run for sponsors, Norm?
I think it's going to be, and I really think that, like Scott was saying there, it's a unique opportunity for them. I wish that, I don't know. I think all of us can agree that, NASCAR is not what it used to be. I think we're starting to see that with their fan base dropping off a little bit. There hadn't been too many people in the stands here recently anyway. But yeah, it's all about television dollars. It's all about sponsors. So if they can get something together, and I think this is a good plan for them, it's a unique opportunity. They're going to be the only game in town, literally. Yeah. So it's a big opportunity, and hopefully everyone's being told, hey, let's not screw this up. Let's play the game. Let's let everybody see that we're doing all the things that we're supposed to do, but let's go out and give them something fun to watch too.
Unlike the regular season races, this event with nobody in the stands is planned. So
if a race happens and nobody sees it in person, there you go. Yeah,
they make a lot of money from the TV deals. I believe the track gets a cut of that too from the TV deals. Obviously, they're not going to be making as much. Even if they are making, they may be losing money here because they're not getting the concessions, the merchandise, the fans, and the seats. But it's something. Some of the other dates that were brought up that has not been made official yet by NASCAR, but could be happening here was Sunday, May 30th. This is just the Cup Series now. Sunday, May 31st at Martinsville, Wednesday, June 3rd at Bristol, Sunday, June 7th at Miami, and Sunday, June 7th at Atlanta, and then June 14th at Miami. That, I guess, was a tentative schedule distributed to the teams according to AutoWeek earlier this week. So,
notably missing was anything in the state of Michigan.
Well, there's a reason for their. I think they're trying to keep close to since there's so many races in such short succession. They're trying to keep it close to most of the teams' home shops. Some other notes here. The World of Outlaws. We mentioned this a little bit ago. They plan to return to non-virtual competition in Iowa Next weekend, May 8th, the World of Outlaw NASA Energy Drink Sprint Cars will be at Knoxville Raceway. And then the following weekend, May 15th, the World of Outlaw Morton Building Late Models will be at Boone Speedway. Neither event will be open to spectators other than watching on Dirt Vision, and the competitors will be by invitation only, featuring 48 car fields, which will have most of the full-time World of Outlaw drivers, and then they'll fill out those fields with a mix of local, regional, and national stars. So there's that. And we're going to skip this because I got Chris Mize. We'll have him talk about that. And I'm not going to do this. Local track updates. Last week we had reported, because they had not been canceled yet, races at Attica, Lima-Land, Oakshade, Fremont. Well, yeah, those have been canceled because of the governor made his announcement on Monday, where we're slowly opening things back up, and it sounds like sporting events are the last thing that's going to be coming back here. So Flat Rock has postponed all of their May events. Toledo has done the same. They originally had their, I think it was Night of Destruction thing on a Memorial Day weekend still on the schedule, but that's been canceled. Lima-Land has postponed the start of the season with no opening date pending Governor DeWine's recommendations. Eldora's postponed all May events. Oakshade Raceway has canceled the next 3 weekends, leaving open the possibility of racing on May 23rd, Memorial Day weekend, with the American Late Model Series. Attica has canceled all May events. Sandusky Speedway's on hold with no opening date pending the governor's recommendations, and Fremont, all racing postponed as well until further notice. With that, I don't know if I can bring Chris in here. I think I can only have 3 guests. We'll find out what happens. It's counting down. Hey, do I have 4 people? Are you there, Chris?
That's 4.
What's happening?
Hey, Chris Mize from Sandusky Speedway. We have 4 people. This is exciting. It's the first time we've done this.
I always wanted to be in a foursome, but not with you guys.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. All right. So there's a couple things I want to talk to you about. You had something you guys talked about the other day and posted on your Facebook page about doing some virtual racing at Sandusky. Well, not at Sandusky, online, but a deal. And I thought that was kind of cool, and I want to get that. I want to be part of that. I'm going to race you pavement guys.
Hey, I tell you what, Doug Dock's a guy in that. I'm barely smart enough to get on this. But yeah, some guys, we got drivers in that to do that race with us, and it was brought up, and we said, let's give it a try. We got Chris Myers involved setting up the stuff, and Shady Bull Speedway. We're having a track built right now in our factor with that. So I mean, there's a lot of interest in. I was shocked. I didn't think there'd be as much interest in it.
There's a lot of racers sitting around looking for something to do.
Well, yeah, and I'm a little bitter about that today, but.
Well, that's the other reason we have you. Before we get to that, when's this virtual racing? Is there a start date on that yet?
We're looking at 2 weeks. We're moving days around. We had Sunday evening at 8:00 planned, and Super Modifieds Oswego had a big race virtual this past Sunday, and it went over well. So they're gonna do Sundays. So we're looking. I think might be Saturday around 8:00 until we actually race. So we might race till April 24th of next year. Who knows? With the way this is going, I mean, we don't know.
Now, you had an announcement you guys made last night. I'll let you go ahead and talk about that and the current status of things.
We put a lot of stuff together, and I feel, listen, at the end of the day, guys got a lot of money tied up in race cars. They put a lot of money and work through the winter in their race cars. One of the things, and people laugh at me, but when you sit and think about it, it's reality is one of the things I started getting concerned about a little bit, and you hear Dr. Acton and Governor DeWine both say it all the time about the mental health state of the stay-at-home orders, and we got to get back. Well, My thing is when guys put a lot of money into a race car and it's sitting in their garage and they got to go out every night and they know it's racing season, that wears on guys. A state of depression might come in, what have you. It's not good mentally. So we went through this big thing, a lot of time, to where we're going to start allowing next Wednesday one car, 5 people, and that was it for 4 hours testing, 7 days a week, 8 to 4. I mean, 8 to noon, noon to 4, 4 to 8. And we got everything approved, insurances and all that. And we went on Facebook Live. I was actually happy because guys were actually going to, instead of talking about it, get out, have a chance to turn some laps. And there's always that one person, Scott. It's got to be a complaint. And that, that it come up. We talked to the health department today, and they said, nope, we can't do this. Local health department. What do you mean? Well, sporting venues are closed, not supposed to open. Arguments, we're not opening, we're testing. We're not racing, we're testing. One person, you say that, but you got a stay-at-home order, but you also got a no mass gatherings of 10 or more people. We're at half the people, one car, and that's it. And I went into we're prepared at Sandusky Speedway to run pure stocks, renegades, beginner stocks with no fans, no concessions. And my point to him was, I'm in a more controlled environment to control the social distancing in a pit area than the best possible situation, even with the testing. And what the comment I got from the health department is the orders are very vague, but it says no. So I guess it's okay. I can go to Walmart and 500 people and walk around. I guess that's a little safer than having one car with 5 people in my pits and open air. Yeah, and I'm not trying to bring up a bad subject, but I'm being. Listen, we complied. We're still complying with the orders, but it's time we start moving on. Everybody's moving on. There's a lot of racers anxious. We need to get some guys on the track, and this is what we felt was the safest way.
Did they give you any indication as to when they might deem it safe enough for you to go ahead and do that?
Well, this afternoon we were on the phone with I wasn't on the phone because sometimes my politically correctness.
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah, Doug's been on the phone with the state health board. He's up to supervisor, whatever. We got decent arguments, legitimate arguments that we were told about an hour and a half ago will go to Dr. Acton's committee first thing in the morning, and we might get a ruling. Now, one of the things I got is, okay, if sporting venues are closed, last I knew, golf was a sport. They got golf in high school as a sport, golf in college as a sport, the PGA. Why the hell are golf courses allowed to be open and we're not? That don't make sense to me. They say no camping, no entertainment venues. Entertainment and sporting venues is what we're considered. Why the hell are the state parks open? I understand going for a walk and that. I get all this, but the legitimate argument is it's time for us to start getting guys on the track. We're in place. We can control the social distancing. We just want to run even without fans. You guys were talking about it earlier. We're not into the pay-per-view stuff right now. I mean, no offense to nobody out there, but BCSN's been in our track several times, through the years, and the next day you wake up, it's on Sunday morning. For a Saturday night short track race, it's hard for me to watch 10 minutes, 5 minutes of it on TV. I get kind of bored. Same thing with what you said, Norm. You got to be there with your senses, smell, the taste, everything. So where we sit with it is we're waiting on an answer. We might get it tomorrow. We might not. The thing we got thrown back at us was, well, you're at a stay-home order, and it continued after today. DeWine continued that on until retail opens up. then why do you have an order of no mass gatherings of 10 or more? Is my next question. It's a vicious circle. Unfortunately, sporting venues, short track racing, we're going to be the last ones that they even think about, and I understand it. We're pretty non-essential if you get down to the bare facts of life. But
Life are we non-essential?
huh? Well, to the main world, it is. You know, to us, it's about as essential as can be this time of year. But we're trying.
We're all going through a draw.
Well, it's upsetting. You put everything in place and you spend the time. Kevin spent a lot of time with insurance companies because everybody thinks it's just the health department, the governor. It isn't. When you're in a situation like this, you got to deal with insurance companies, liabilities, you know, and you got to clear it through your insurance company, what you can and can't do, you know, and to spend all that time just for when they get a complaint or something, they have to investigate it. Then it becomes a whole different situation when you talk to them. And I guess I'm stupid for going on Facebook Live, and we should have just did it. But you know, I mean, we should have just did it and been done with it. But you know, we've always been up front since the beginning. Scott, you watch some of our shows, and you know, from 7 weeks ago, we said, this is what we're doing. We're not going to announce an opening date, this, that, or the other. When we know something, we'll tell you. We thought we knew something, we go out there, and now we look pretty stupid because now, you know, we're going to have to come back. We're in the middle of a fight. And, you know, you don't win a lot of times when you fight the government. And unfortunately,
It's not a fight, it's a discussion.
well, yeah, it's a discussion. And the unfortunate part is if the state health department says no, you're not doing it, we're not the rebels, you know. We'll comply reluctantly, but we'll comply with what the orders are. But I mean, we've spent a lot of time figuring out the safest way possible to do this, and I'll be dead honest with you guys. I don't understand how I can walk into Walmart, Kroger's, Target, any of these places, and be around 500, 400. You know, they got a capacity rate of 700, I think, over here at Kroger's. And after that, they got a high, can be shoulder to shoulder. I don't care. They got their 6 foot spacing at Walmart, but in front of you and behind you. But you look over and sometimes you're 3, 4 foot from the other X. I guess the virus don't travel sideways. I guess it just goes front and back. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of upsetting things here, and it's not just Sandusky Speedway. You know, Oakshade, Attica, Shady Bowl. You know, you go to all the tracks in Ohio. I mean, I guess we're in a little better situation you guys are up there, Ron. But you know, I mean,
How many people can you put in your boat and go fishing?
well,
And
and that's, you know, that's, and here, stop and think about this, and not being sarcastic. 5 people come with that car.
Are you making them wear masks?
95% of the time, what's going to come in our pits to test is family that's been through this whole pandemic together in a house anyways. So it's not like you're introducing somebody new, you know, or they've been in a garage. I don't care what anybody says. They've been in a garage working together through this whole thing. It's not like somebody new's coming into that group. So
that's actually happened.
yeah. You know, and I get, listen, I get, don't think for a second I'm taking this lightly because I've took it serious from day one. But it's time. It's time. We need to get cars on a track, whether it's just testing, and I'm talking all tracks, you know, that can, whether it's just testing. If you got to do 1 car, 5 people, or we're allowed to race with no fans, you know, eventually, we need to get cars on the track for, and all seriousness, one, for the mental health of our racers and car owners, you know, that are sitting staring at that car day after day, and 2, it's just time. I mean, they're opening things up
Slowly.
It ain't like we're asking to go put on a show with 1,000 people sitting in the grandstands. We know we're at a stage right now, and I don't know if this will make sense to you guys. For them to say, okay, 300 or more gathering, well, we'll let 200 people in their grandstands, but who's going to police the social distancing? What we want is a percentage.
You're gonna have to put X's on the bleachers.
Right, and who's going to police that? Somebody's going to get punched in the nose. I sure the hell ain't going to. I mean, the wrong guy's going to you're going to walk up to the wrong guy, and he just build up aggression. Ain't got his unemployment checks yet, whatever, but.
Well, they're policing themselves then.
We're looking at same thing. Rick Young at Shady Bull's looking at. If we got a capacity of 2,800 seats, give us a percentage. 30% capacity. To ask us to police social distancing and that is almost impossible. If they stick to that, we'll race with no fans because it's impossible. What you guys are talking about a cost of racing. Drivers think, oh, the purse pays the back gate on a bigger, and you hit it on the head, employees and everything else. Now you got to hire extra people to monitor that social distancing. So it's an upsetting time. There's light at the end of the tunnel, as you can see coming to hit my face on so but there's light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, they're opening things up, but here's my biggest fear, and it's a gloom and doom. My biggest fear is this. If we start opening up, and they're opening up manufacturing, which they're not putting spaces between each other. There's a lot of companies out there getting away with a lot of stuff. And this flares back up. They shut us back down. We're not going to see racing at all this year. And
taking steps backwards.
Yeah, we're going to go backwards. If it flares back up, he's already Governor DeWine. And don't get me wrong. I think personally, Governor DeWine's done a hell of a job from the beginning of this. There's been some hiccups, but how'd you get up every morning knowing that every decision you made through this thing, 11.6 million people are affected, not just a small group.
Governor's with you in a heartbeat, Chris.
He wants to change governors. He doesn't like his governor up there.
I mean, I did not like Governor DeWine. I did not vote for him. But I think of all the United States, Ohio's governor's done the best job in handling this situation. Now, though, it's time we need clarification. The rules are so vague. We're not opening. We just want to test. We had the okay. Now we don't have the okay. And it's, if you'd have talked to me about 2 hours ago, there would have been a whole lot more verbiage coming out of me. I've calmed down.
That's why I waited so long to get you on. Why did you cool down just a little bit?
It's, and I get it, but, to all the people out there in the racing world, it's just not Sandusky Speedway to me. Dirt tracks, and I love dirt racing just as much as I do.
Hey, speaking of which, any update on a possible Dirty 30?
Yeah, we'll talk offline.
All right, Ted.
There were some things changed hands there.
Chris, if you get this test and tune approved, could you prep the track for me?
Yeah. Hell yeah. I'll put some, what do they call it? Strip grip. Strip grip from the day. Hey, I'll put you in the infield on a little go-kart track, Ron.
All right. Well, we need to move on here. You guys want to stick around and play how many with us real quick? This will be an easy one.
Go ahead.
All right. Last week, how many yellow flags were going to be in this past Sunday's eNASCAR racing deal at Talladega? There was 3 cautions. And that means that the in-show winner was me because I said 7, which was lower than Ron and Kathy had said. Our online winner was Dean Henry and Jeffrey Ferree, who guessed 4. Actually, I don't know if Dean won. I think I might have forgot taking him off from last week. But Jeffrey Ferree or Ferree or Ferree. What's that? Ferree? All right. He's the winner of a Big D's large pizza. Get with Dean Henry, and he'll hook you up with that. And this week's how many? If you want to play along, you can put your guess in the comments of our Facebook Live, unless you're one of the 4 people that are on right now. Then you can't. So you can't win that Big D's pizza this week. This week, there wasn't much going on this weekend. So back to the number that's on the side of the winning virtual car at Virtual Dover on Sunday. what number is going to win Sunday Dover in the eNASCAR challenge deal. We'll go with Norm, who's been quiet for a little while here. We'll let you guess first. Alex Bowman won last week, and William Byron won the 2 weeks before that. So,
yeah, I think the one that's been coming on lately and starting to figure stuff out is the number 2 car. So we'll go with number 2.
Gonna take a crap. Okay, good choice. What about you? What about you, Chris?
24.
24. That's a solid guess. That probably would have been mine. What about you, Ron?
88.
That's a good one too. And now I don't know who I'm going to do. I'm going to go with the 8. Dale Jr. Has Kathy got a guess? Over there, Ron?
Okay. It doesn't even have to be a car number. It's just going to be whoever's closest to that number.
Yeah, that's true.
21. She's going with the Benedetto.
21. All right. And if again you want to play along, just put your car number guess in the comments there, and we'll find out who wins next week. Chris Mize, thanks for joining us. Keep us updated on what's going on there with your discussion.
And discussion. Hey, I appreciate all you guys. I appreciate all you guys do for racing with this show.
Good luck, Chris.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, later.
Thanks,
Chris Mize, Norm, thank you for joining us and hanging out with us. Hopefully we can talk to you again sometime.
Yeah, soon we hope. The bird took off somewhere. I don't know where he's at, but
well, he didn't poop on your shoulder. I was kind of worried about that.
I do not.
I went to dinner.
What? The bird's dinner? What?
He went to dinner. I didn't say he was going to dinner.
Oh, no, he's not dinner. No, that would be a quick meal.
All right, Norm. We'll see you we'll hope to see you at a track sometime this summer.
Very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Norm Van Ness, thanks. So appreciate those guys joining us again. We're about at the end of we've gone over here, but we'll take a look at how our Dittman Motorsports deal is going. This poll ends in 3 minutes. That's the one between Dennis Wisman and Terry Rushlow. And we'll take a live look at how things are shaking out here. Possibly.
Maybe.
We got to do the share screen here, and then I got to find it. Oh, no, I shared it twice. That's crazy. Here we go. So right now, the vote count in that one is 480 for the Rebel Dennis Wisman, 594 for Terry Rushlow. It looks like Terry Rushlow will be one of our championship contenders. Again, 3 minutes left in that one. And then let's refresh this one between Matthew Chapman and Larry Kingseed Jr. And Matthew Chapman's got 493. Larry Kingseed bumped up a little bit to 423. But it looks like it's going to be between Chapman and Rushlow. This one ends in 3 minutes as well. So if you want to go and check that out or vote, if you haven't voted already, because you can only vote once, head on over and do that now, because you're going to run out of time. Next week, we'll try and have our 2 championship contenders on, because that championship match and chance to win that $200 worth of Dittman Motorsports credit plus $50 Big D gift certificate, VARC stuff, vintage American race cars, like that hat Ron's got. It could have coronavirus now since it's on Ron's head. I don't know if anybody want it, but
I can probably promote another one if somebody is really afraid.
Second place getting the $100 there for Ron Miller Race Cars. Third place getting the $10. How do we say $10? 10 gallons of.
It doesn't get you very far, Scott.
Not especially when it's race fuel. No. And our fourth place finisher will get a pit pass for Oakshade Raceway. And so each of these guys are going to win something. We'll find out what that is next week, and we'll try and have our 2 championship contenders on next week's show, as well as Rob Rem, racing for First Responders, gentlemen. who we mentioned last week. We'll talk more about him. He's got a story that's pretty interesting. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Are you, Ron?
I'm not.
Well, then
Next week will be educational and informative.
there you go. So that's going to be it for this week's edition of the Hammer Down Racing Report. Again, do apologize that we went over a little bit. And again, get your guesses in for the how many. Dean Henry's got his in. He says 11. John Young says 24. Craig Dittman, he says 21.
He agrees with Kathy.
Yeah. Brian McKinney says 88. Larry Kingseed's got the 66.
Good number, Brian.
Dana, she agrees with my pick with the 8. Again, you can put those picks in up until 1 o'clock on Sunday. So if you're listening to us on iHeartRadio or iTunes or whatever podcast, and you're not seeing the video stuff, you can still go on over to our Facebook page, Hammer Down Racing Report Facebook.com/Hammer Down Racing Report, and find the video, and you can put your guess in there. Also, make sure to come back to our Facebook page. Probably in about 20 minutes or so, I'll have the championship match posted for our Dittman Motorsports virtual car show, as well as the consolation match. I think we had some comments up there that said we're going to call that the consolation match. That'll determine 3rd and 4th place as well. And that match, both those matches will be up for a week. Again, thanks to Dave Kemmer for helping out with the show. Thanks to Ron Miller and all of our great sponsors. Again,
Hammer.
What?
And thanks to Scott Hammer.
Nobody thanks me. Big D's Pizza, Oakshade Raceway, Racing for First Responders, Ron Miller Race Cars. Make sure to support our sponsors, especially in these very strange times. And maybe someday we may return to our studio. Oh, by the way, I had a new camera. I don't know if anybody noticed. I don't like it. I think I'm going back to the older one where it was a little more blurry.
A whole lot more better.
You can see my ugliness a little bit more. So might have to go back to the old camera. But again, because of our sponsors, I was able to get that, and we continue this in this current platform of video conferencing. So, got anything else, Ron, before we go?
30 in the can, Scott?
What?
Is it number 130?
No, 128.
Oh, okay.
You're a little ahead of ourselves, but that's all right. That was show number 128 for April 30th, the final day of April in the coronavirus pandemic. These will be our pandemic episodes. Originally, we were going to go on hiatus. Remember that? We would have been off for many, many weeks.
That would have been sad.
Yeah, and we're still finding stuff to talk about. And we even went like one of our longest shows right now, and we didn't have anything to talk about. Chris Mize.
Great guests.
Chris Mize likes to talk, though, and I always enjoy listening to him, so that's cool. So let's get out of here. We'll see you next week. Tune in again next week, 7 o'clock, Facebook Live, and listen to us on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Google, whatever you listen to, Spotify.
Folks, we appreciate it.
We'll see you next week. Bye.
You have been listening to the Hammer Down Racing Report from the Ron Miller Race Car Studio. Listen on demand on iHeartRadio.